what I've found is when I don't make myself that slave to the product, when I don't place these super high expectations on how this stuff is supposed to go, and I basically just place myself in the role of being a student of the process and say, okay, well, this is how this is going, and this is what I'm learning, and this is what I can think about for next time, everything just eases up.
This is Intentionally Ever After. Join intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek for a series of personal conversations and coaching sessions with various people about how living with intention shows up for them.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Intentionally Ever After. Today, I am very delighted to be speaking with my friend, Mr. Michael Roderick. Michael, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here as well. Michael, will you kindly introduce yourself to folks?
Sure. So my name is Michael Roderick, and I run a company called Small Pond Enterprises, which helps thoughtful givers become thought leaders through the creation of referable brands. So a lot of people within the thought leadership space and the expert space deprioritize the packaging of their intellectual property. So I help them put those packages together, come up with ways to make their ideas more memorable and referable.
Wow, that sounds very intentional to start blending in a theme here. When did you start this venture?
So I've had Small Pond Enterprises company for a pretty long time. I think I started it back in like 2008 or something like that. But when I first originally started the business, it was mostly geared towards the entertainment world. I was doing a lot of work in producing. I was developing a lot of shows and projects and things like that. And eventually it morphed into more of a consulting business that focused on teaching networking and sort of helping people on the whole like relationship building side and all of those types of things. And then probably about 5 or 6 years back, right before the birth of my first daughter, Juniper, I realized that just the whole sort of teaching networking side of things really hard to sell. It just like didn't really work from a business model kind of standpoint. So I decided to experiment with thought leadership, and I started digging deeper into what is it that gets people to talk about us when we're not there in a good way. And I discovered that there was a lot to this idea of referability. So I just completely shifted gears and started focusing on referability, and haven't really looked back since.
So present day, what's a way that shows up for you in your business as far as how you help folks with this?
Yeah, so I run a mastermind called Hitmakers, and basically a lot of people within the thought leadership world who are subject matter experts, they kind of fall into the category of being like a Destiny's Child, where we've heard of them, but they're not, right? And in order to be beyond, you have right? You need to have one of those hits. So what I do in Makers is I bring subject matter experts together, and we stress test these big ideas, and we develop these big ideas into hits. And something that I love doing, I love helping folks who have big things that they want to do in the world really package those ideas and make sure that they are accessible, influential, and memorable. And that's one of the ways I support folks that I work with.
And are you doing this on a one-on-one basis in a group setting? How does that typically show up?
So Hitmakers is a group program. It's a group mastermind, but I also do one-on-one work with coaches and consultants who, in some cases, are building out their own intellectual property. So they're trying to figure out what is their framework, what is their big idea, how are they sort of showing up in the world, making sure that they are packaging things so that they are seen as more than just the expert in the area. They're seen as the leader within that area, where people are like, I want to follow your stuff, I want to listen to your stuff, that type of thing.
So it sounds like a handful of years ago you made a pivot of sorts and started experimenting. And it sounds like also
Mhm.
there's some semblance of that with what you do with your clients is you help them to experiment with these big ideas, right? So
Mhm.
in terms of the name of this show, what does it mean to you to live intentionally?
Mm. So I think living intentionally is about thinking about where you want to go. I think all too often we sort of like allow ourselves to just be sort of swept up by everything else that's kind of happening around us, and sometimes that takes over our life and that takes over our business, whether that be the things that people are sort of expecting of us, the or the things that we're sort of chasing or sort of trying to do or trying to be. And I think living intentionally is when you sit down, you actually ask yourself, well, what is it that I actually want, right? And what would I prefer to be doing? And then look at your life and say, well, why? What am I doing within my current situation that is going against that? And what am I doing in my current situation that is going for that? And then make those choices about the things that you keep and the things that you let go.
So you gave a great example of that as far as shifting a business trajectory a number of years ago. How about for you, the man, the person? What does it look
Sure.
like for you to live with intention?
Yeah. So I think that it's paying attention to those things outside of the business. So I remember during the when the pandemic sort of first hit, and we live in New York, so we were like super locked down. Like we're not talking small potatoes, right? Like it was you couldn't leave your house sort of stuff. And I had before that been much like all the time. So whether it be I was out there speaking or whether it be I was going to events or I was hosting events myself, they were actually very rarely nights where I was home and home for dinner, right? And sort of home for that like family time. And then of course, when lockdown happened, there was no option to do that, right? That wasn't a possibility. So we started as a family having dinner together, and I had this realization of how much I'd sort of missed out on that, right? And how I was sort of away from that for a really long time. So now that things have started to open back up, I'm actually very, very careful about that evening time and what I book, so that I can be here for dinner. I can be with the girls and spend my time listening and just being present, at home. And I've made it a point where, yes, I can get invited if I wanted to tomorrow to things that would easily fill my week and fill every single evening. But now I say no to significantly more of those requests than I probably have ever done in my life.
Yeah. Do you have a hard and fast rule as far as when you say no to an event or an invite?
It's tricky. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that would be a hard that I'd be like, oh, that's a hard and fast rule. Um, but I do look at I do pay very close attention to the number of occurrences, right? So like this week is a little bit different where I have two friends who both have events in the evening that I have committed to, and this is probably one of the first weeks in a number of weeks that I'm going to two things on the evening. In the evening time, I'll usually only go to one if say I invited to a third, unless there was that was dire, where it was really concerning that I didn't go. I would not take that third thing on.
Okay, so it seems generally like there's a rule of one. You got a one rule, right? And two is
Yeah,
within the range of acceptability, but you're going to vet it. And three is like,
yeah,
no, there's really it's got to be something extreme.
yeah, yeah. I just and I've gotten to that point where I've kind of I've run the gamut, right? There was a period in my life where I would take meetings starting early in the morning and meet with people until late in the evening, right? And then go out and go to cocktail parties and do all the things. And I went that process of sort of being always available for sort of the rest of the world, right? And then I saw what like to not be available all the time and being all the time. And I shifted things and changed things based on what I had discovered. And again, going back to what we were talking about before, what I wanted, right? And I basically just asked myself, like, do I want to feel rushed? Do I want to feel, like nothing's able to get done? Do I want to feel frustrated about all of these things on the to-do list? Or do I want to feel comfortable and in control of my time? And that one won't right from the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering if you're going to answer which one won, but so thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
which one ended up winning out.
of
But
course.
but you've also alluded to the fact that it can change and shift, and maybe with the passage of time, different phase of life, or after having tried something. So it sounds like for you at least, living with intention is something that you just keep tabs on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. I think that one of our most important tools that we don't often use enough is action, right? We spend so much time learning about planning, we spend so much time learning about execution. There are productivity books for days, right? There are planning books for days. But when it comes to reflection, we've got maybe a journal and morning pages, and that's about it. But reflection is such an important part of the process. So I'm always reflecting on my experiences. I'm always going back and saying, okay, how did that go? Did it go well? Did it go badly? What would I like to change? What did I find was good? I'm always asking those questions, and I find that just being reflective is one of the best ways to really see what's working, where do I want to go, where do I want to invest my time, how do I want to handle my time, and all those things.
So it sounds like you're constantly being reflective. Do you have a specific process that you go through, or do you feel like you're just constantly in a state of checking in as you're going through your days and weeks?
Yeah, so I have made it a point to jot down ideas and thoughts usually towards the end of the day. If there are things that I'm noticing, right? If there are things that I'm just like, oh, you know what? This is happening a lot, or this isn't happening enough, right? So I'll often look at the things that are working and basically say, like, okay, if these things are working, why are they working? And how do I have more of those things? I'll look at the things that are not working and I'll ask myself, okay, if these things are not working, what is causing them to not, what is causing the problem, what is causing the issue, and are there any things within all of that that I can control? And then I'll just look, where are the resources that I can tap into? Are there books that I could be reading right now? Are there conversations that I should be having? Like, what are the things that need to be addressed in order for me to move in the direction of more of what I want and is are frustrating or bothersome or yeah, any number of things.
Okay, so you're not able to sell a product to my listeners that's going to help them single-handedly organize their reflections.
No, no, no. I mean, the thing is, and that I think is probably the most important thing about reflection is that I could give you a system, right? Like I could say like, do this, say this, ask this, etc. But only a certain percentage of people are going to buy into that system and use that system. And then anybody who go, it doesn't work for them, or they're going to feel like failing. They're going to feel like they're not doing it right. And you can't do action wrong. That's the most important thing. If you are taking the time to look at what you're doing and just think about it, whether it be you're jotting it down, whether it be you're doing voice notes to yourself, whether it be you're just taking the time to sort of think about it, you're doing more than 90% of the world, because most of us don't reflect at all. So I don't think you need a system necessarily. I don't think you need a process. I don't think you need a course or, a 5-step PDF, right? I think you just need to say, every once in a while, I'm going to take a step back and look at what's going on. Now, if you do it on a daily basis, or if you do it on a fairly regular basis, you will notice patterns, and patterns are very, very powerful, right? If we see patterns and we see, oh, okay, this is what's happening, I can see that this is a pattern, then you know whether or not you want a pattern interrupt, right? And whether or not you want to change it. But again, I don't think there is a way to do reflection wrong.
So as long as you're trying it, then it's successful.
Exactly.
No, I buy into that. The only adjustment I would make to make it match my own philosophy is that I believe that is a system, right? And I think that you can continue to refine your system. One system might be, every now and then I do think about what it is that I've done and how I might want to make it better. I think that's a system, right? That's that person's system. But I agree, you can't force or expect someone to use what works well for you and expect it to work well for them, at least consistently, right? I think it's overly rigid.
Yes.
Do you have a change in habit that you've made that has made an exponential payoff for you?
Yes. A while back, I started working with a health coach, and I had never done that before. And I had what would be considered arguably the worst diet a human being could probably have.
Please give me an example. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I drank anywhere between 4 to 5 cans of Coke a day on some cases. Everything was fast food for the most part, or something just like fried and ridiculous. I spent most of my evenings gorging on desserts. I would never have a meal that did not have dessert. I actually considered, a meal was incomplete unless there was dessert attached to it. And I basically stayed away from anything vegetable oriented unless it had some kind of sugar on it, right? Unless there was some way to make it taste good, right? Was sort of the idea. So I met with this health coach, and she explained to me how when you have a lot of carbs in your diet, it basically, like, the more of them that you have, like the more you sort of go overboard, the more problems you end up with. And in some cases it sort of like leads into like chronic illness and all this other stuff. And I looked at, she had me basically track my meals for about a week, and get to the number of carbs. Now, the idea is that if you are between like 100 and 150, you're okay. Like it's fine. If you're really, really low, then you're in the realm of like keto and all these other sort of dietary processes. But if you were above 150, that was kind of not good, right? And that was where you were starting to move into like inflammation and like all these different types of things. So uh, by the end of that week, I looked at every day, and I think I was over 350 carbs a day, maybe more. Like it was just like out of control. And I had that moment. I was like, oh man, that's just not good.
So this is after you've already enlisted the help of a coach, and then you found out you
Yeah.
were an overachiever in this area, right? You're hitting 300, 350.
Yeah.
What is it that actually caused you to reach out to another human to help you with this? I mean, I understand,
Yeah.
you hit a point, something's got to give. And
Yeah.
typically for us, that means I just got to do this. I just got to do that, right? You probably knew all the things. I just got to cut it down to 2 Cokes a day, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that kind of forced that connection? Like, I'm going to enlist the help of somebody else to help me with this thing that I know I quote unquote should be able to do by myself.
Yeah. So I think what it ended up coming down to was the health. When you are in bad health, it kind of disrupts like every other aspect of your life. So I was having a lot of stomach problems. I was just always like, I always had a stomach ache for the most part. Like it just always kind of felt kind of like I always kind of felt miserable, even after, like I'd eat this food that I'm like, oh my God, this is such good food. I love this food, et cetera. But then I'd be sick, and it would, or I'd feel like heavy and like nasty. And then I was super tired and all these different types of things. And I basically was kind of like, I just like, there's probably a way to feel better. There was just that like inkling in my head, like where I was like, there's probably a way to feel better. And I know that people have told me to do this, and it's sort of the classic, like my wife was telling me for years, like, you are just out of control, right? And I'm like, nah, it's fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But it's sort of had that moment where I was like, oh man, this is just, I got to see, what I can learn here, because this is just not good. And it wasn't until I sort of, went through that tracking and sort of saw it like really in front of me that I was like, whoa, there needs to be a change here, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it kind of put a metric with just the feeling that you got, the sense that you got, also the physical feeling that you got. So it
Yeah.
sounds like this health coach was able to get you from the 300s back to reasonable levels.
Yes. Yeah. So she was very good about sort of challenges. And I'm one of those people where it's like, if you tell me I need to try and do something and you give me some like time bound dynamic of it, I will I will not let myself screw it up. Like I just like I get into that mode of like, I'm not gonna disappoint myself. I just like I get into that place. So the very first thing she did was she challenged me for a week to have no soda and to only have seltzer, to have no sugar cereal, which I was always like downing like any sugar cereal in the morning that I could possibly down, and no fast food for a week. And
For this same week, all of
yep,
those
the
restrictions.
same week.
Okay.
And basically, I was like, okay, I'll try. Like when she first said it, I was like, there's no way. It's just not gonna, like, I don't no way. Like this is just ridiculous. And I'll never forget, I started drinking seltzer, and that last can of Coke sat in my fridge for months. Like I just never touched it. I just stayed away from it. This was probably a year ago, maybe even more. I still have not had a bowl of sugar cereal. And I've had a little bit of fast food, but I very rarely have it. Like it's a very, very rare occasion, that I have it. That first week was crazy, because it was just like, what is going on? How do I do this? But by the end of that first week, I already started to feel better. I was like, oh, my stomach doesn't hurt as much. This doesn't, all these things were not bothering me, and I basically just kind of kept on after that. And I was tracking my numbers again, and I basically just like made that commitment to go down to that smaller level. So I think I brought it down to like 150, somewhere around there ended up being my max, that I was going for. And I really have not looked back. Like I'm at the point now where I was probably 215 when I first started all of that. I'm like 189 now or something ridiculous. And I very rarely ever have any kind of soda. I almost always have seltzer now. And yeah, just things have really kind of shifted in terms of how I think about my eating.
That's amazing. So it sounds like with the help of the coach, you were able to reframe the way you viewed eating,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Is this someone you still meet with periodically, or
Yes.
that's okay?
Yeah.
Is that because it's helpful for the accountability, or why do you feel?
Yeah, I think it's helpful for the accountability, but it's also it's also helpful to sort of talk through like, okay, once you're sort of at a certain level, it's like, what do you want to do next, right? Like, where do you want to go next? And I think like we're always and I think that's why we bring on coaches, because we're always constantly evolving, right? And once we've reached a point where we're like, okay, I've got this thing under control, we want somebody to basically say, okay, well, what do you help us sort of find where that next layer is, where that next level is. So a lot of the time we'll meet and we'll talk about where I'm at and what I want to do next, and how does that shake out, and those types of things. And that's always really helpful as well.
Because in your instance, you're saying that food is something that doesn't go away after a certain period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think you're always going to be faced with it, right? And you're always going to be faced with those choices, right? And there are all sorts of little guilty pleasures, right? That I have. That's like, oh my God, I want that, and it's like, thinking about the alternatives, thinking about the other sort of avenues, thinking about what does it look like to sort of fall off the wagon and like go kind of crazy. What is it not? How do those things operate? Having somebody on the outside helping you see that, or sort of talking you through that, is, I think, really useful.
So it seems like you've taken your own strength of reflection and brought in the big guns, so to speak, brought in some additional
Hmm.
resource to hold you to it,
Yep.
and almost kind of a qualified lens to your reflection. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that I have not spent my life studying nutrition, right? Like, I have not spent my life thinking about those things and sort of being in an area that would sort of put me in the category of expert, right? And sort of have that level of expertise. So I'm going to look for somebody who has gone through that process, because they're going to give me the cliff notes of what I need to do, right? And what I need to know. And I think that's one of the most important things, is to always kind of look at, well, what are the things that you need to improve on, or that you need to develop, and who do you talk to, who do you have a conversation with, who's already done the deep dives in those places, who can give you, here are the main things to think about, so that you don't get overwhelmed with all the information that's out there about what you could or couldn't do, and all of those types of things.
Right. And just speaking of this specific industry or area of food or diet, I mean, obviously we can, expand it to pretty much any other area, but there's just an overabundance of information out there, and conflicting information too,
Uh-huh.
right?
100%.
And so, yeah, sure, we can each individually take it upon ourselves to carve out the time to do our own research and to try to disseminate. But to your point, likely many of us haven't done that specific area of study, right, or level
Yep.
of studying this thing. So why not, get someone to help not just disseminate the information that's out there, but help us apply it to our own lives. So I
Hmm.
think that's fantastic. Seems like you've been very intentional, with how you've been living your diet.
That is true.
So, in addition to, or you're allowed to use this answer if you like, but what area in your life feels just about perfect?
Such an interesting question, because I think perfection is one of those things where it's like it kind of doesn't really exist, right? Like the idea of perfect is,
Totally.
we're
And you're allowed 2 to 3 lines on your idea of perfect, or the flawed idea of perfect. But I am putting it in quotes, right?
yes, yeah, no, exactly, and I think, yeah, we always sort of have this idea of like what is perfect in our head, but like nothing will ever sort of match up to what our expectations are in our heads, right? And sort of what we see. It reminds me of when I was a playwright. You'd write a play and think you could see in your head what that play looked like, but when the director came in and the actors came in and you actually put up the show, it never looked exactly like what you saw in your head. It just was impossible, right? And I think that perfection kind of follows that same that same kind of dynamic. So with all of that said, if I were to look at what do I feel like really kind of fits into that close to perfect, sort of place, I I think these days it's the flow and sort of ease of my life with my business. I think that's the best way I can describe it. It's like I for a very long time had this split between the two worlds, where it was like I was out, doing things to grow the business, and then I was home, and I was like living the home life and living the business life. And these days, it just feels like, yes, when I'm in here, working, I'm working, but like when I go out, it's like I'm not carrying all of this extra stuff. I feel like I've gotten to this place of, I think balance is a really hard word, and you always want to be sort of careful of the idea of balance, but like I've gotten to this place of harmony where it's just like these two things can coexist, right? And I don't feel pressured by either, um right now.
That seems like a very calm place to be.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I just sort of hit this point where I had this realization about how when we place just too much emphasis on things, how things actually get harder. So so like it it it's it's one of those ideas of like holding something gently versus squeezing it, and that's the way I've started to see my business, my family, like all those, is that like I hold it all gently, because if I get too caught up and if I get too keyed up about any of these things, then everything just gets really hard and it gets really frustrating. But if I hold it gently, where I'm just like, okay, these are the things that are happening, and some of it is going to be good and some of it is going to be bad, some of it is going to work, some of it is going to not, and I just sort of look at it that way, it really kind of changes everything. And it ties to this concept. I talk about this a lot with clients as well, where I talk about the idea of the tennis novice and the tennis pro. And basically, if a tennis novice misses a shot, usually the game is over because the tennis novice is in their own head, right? The second that they miss the shot, they're thinking, why did I miss that shot? Where, what's going to happen? Am I going to win the game? Is it going to work out? And they're basically not paying attention to the game anymore. They're just, they're just freaking out. Whereas a tennis pro misses a shot and basically says, okay, I missed a shot. Where was I standing? Where was the other person standing? What can I do now? Like, what can I learn from this? And even if they lose the game, they go back and they like look at the game, right? And they sort of think about it and they go through it. And I think that the tennis pro is a student of the process, whereas the tennis novice is a slave to the product, where they just believe that the outcome is all that matters. So what I've found is when I don't make myself that slave to the product, when I don't place these super high expectations on how this stuff is supposed to go, and I basically just place myself in the role of being a student of the process and say, okay, well, this is how this is going, and this is what I'm learning, and this is what I can think about for next time, everything just eases up. And I found like one of the things, like sales comes up a lot with people when it comes to anything like coaching oriented or consulting oriented, and there's no shortage of people who will talk to you about sales. But the thing that I found that really just changed my life in regards to sales was I let go of expectation. Like I let go of that like desire for the outcome. It wasn't like I was talking to this person because I was trying to, and thinking about all the business that I'm going to win at the end of this conversation. I was just like, I'm just going to listen, kind of hear where they're at, see what's going on, see if I can help. I'll let them know if I can help. If they want to work with me, that's awesome. If they don't, that's totally cool. I'll probably learn a lot of stuff from that, and maybe there's somebody else I can help them with. And the second that I started just like approaching things from that angle, I stopped really worrying about sales. And I have people who tell me all the time, who join my programs or sort of do my go through coaching with me or whatever. They'll literally be like, I never felt like I was being sold. I just felt like we were having a conversation. I decided like this was the next step. Like this was the way to go. And I really, really attribute that to this aspect of getting rid of that area of expectation.
Yeah, by shifting that mentality, it sounds not only like it reduced the pressure of that interaction, perhaps, but it also sounds like it enabled you to be a lot more present and engaged in that moment by letting go of the outcome.
Yeah, and that's actually, you're bringing up a really important point, which is that so often when we are thinking about an outcome, we are either living in the past or living in the future. So we're thinking about all the things that had happened before, or we're thinking about all the things that could possibly happen. So if we're in either of those two places, we are not living in the present in that moment. So we're going to miss a ton of what the other person is saying. And we've all had those experiences. You're reading a book, it gives you some really interesting idea. You start thinking about that idea, and then that idea bounces into another idea. Next thing you know, you're 3 pages in and you're like, what did I just read? And it happens the same in conversation, right? Where we're talking to somebody, they mention something, we're like, oh, that now I got to do that thing when I get home and take care of the laundry. And next thing you know, you missed like half of what they said. So I think it's one of those things where we do have to spend the time really paying attention to, are we in the present, or are we letting ourselves get sucked into the future or sucked into the past?
And it sounds like with a bit of even unstructured reflection before you go into an interaction, it sounds like it's a great way to maybe head this off at the past. Is that true?
100%. Yeah. If you sit down before you're about to have a conversation and you just sort of have, a couple of minutes to sort of think about it for yourself and say, okay, what are the things that could derail me? Like, what are the things that could make me less present? And can I adjust that? So if you know that you are naturally going to be distracted by a buzz that comes from your phone or your watch, are you gonna turn off those notifications for that, for that time, right? Are you gonna step away if that's something that or if you know that when people mention certain ideas, it sends you off into the future, or it sends you off into the past? Well, are you going to keep an eye out for those ideas? And when you hear somebody mention that thing that normally sends you off, are you going to be like, oh, Okay, I would love to think about that right now, but I'm not. I'm going to jot it down and I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay with this person.
That sounds great. That sounds like you're also bringing in your sense of your own core values by doing that. What matters most to me, right?
Exactly.
And to you, it sounds like it's being present with the person you're
Yeah.
engaged with.
Yes. Yeah.
So, without looking to the past or the future,
Mhm.
who is somebody that you presently admire,
Mm.
and what do you admire about them?
So I'm going to say my wife, Nora. Uh, and she has spent so much time thinking about just everything oriented with parenting. She's read just more of, more stories and articles and all these different types of things. And she just always has a way to think about how we're how we're raising the girls. And it's one of those things that level of attention and that level of sort of commitment to that process of learning is something that is just absolutely amazing. And uh I get a chance to read about parenting every once in a while. I get a chance to sort of see things every once in a while, but I am not nearly as well versed as she is, and it's amazing. It's amazing to watch her manage challenging moments with the girls. Like when something comes up, it's amazing to learn from her about how do I think about my own way of reacting and sort of handling what's going on. What am I conscious of? What am I not conscious of? And it's one of those things that I really really admire her for.
Well, it doesn't sound dissimilar to the art of reflection, right? It sounds like she's reflecting on, again, the things that she's reading about, the commitment she's put into learning, right? And the constant, maybe reflection that she's doing about how is it that she wants to be or shows up. So it sounds like some of the themes that you've touched on that you've tried to focus on are a lot of the things that you admire in her and her parenting in particular.
Yeah.
What do you imagine some people admire about you?
Such an interesting question, right? Like, because you're always like, oh well, if I say this, am I bragging, right? Like it's just like
Well,
so
feel
much goes
free
into
to
your brain,
here's your
right?
get out of jail free card. You can you're free to say I hope people admire, right? You're allowed
Nice.
to approach this however you like.
I like that. I like that. I I hope people admire. If I had to sort of take a guess at what they might admire, is my ability to connect people. And I feel like I hear that all the time. I have a lot of people who tell me that some of the introductions that I've made for them have led to these, sometimes lifelong friendships, sometimes, really great business opportunities and those types of things. And I feel like that's something that comes up pretty often. So I would imagine if somebody were asked about the thing that they admire, I think that would be the one that would be most likely to come up.
I mean, I also imagine that given that you've been getting specific feedback about that, it sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't
Yes.
seem too far. It doesn't seem like a huge leap to imagine that people might. That sounds like
Yeah.
that sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Is there something currently that you are focused on in trying to improve?
Hmm. It's interesting. I would say, it's probably continuing to refine prioritization. So every day there are lots of different things that I could be spending time on. And I get, the to-do list kind of together, or I sort of get those like couple of things where it's like, okay, I need to work on this. But I still have instances where certain things, it's just like, oh, I probably didn't need to spend that much time on this, or this actually isn't really moving the needle and helping. This is just something I think I have to do, all of those types of things. So I think that one of the things that I am spending a lot more time on these days is looking at that list of things and asking myself honestly, which things really do belong at the top of that list, which things don't belong on that list, and which things are really helping, versus it feels like I need to do them.
And where do you think the potentially difficult decision lies once you've identified perhaps the
I,
most important?
yeah, I think where probably the most difficult decision ends up living is in the concern around disappointment, right? We have people who reach out to us for certain things and they want certain things, and you know we have relationships that we've established and we've created, and there are times where I will do something or sort of go through that process for somebody because I have more concern about how they'll feel if it doesn't happen, versus how I'll feel, right? And sort of like and what's going on. So I think that that's probably one of the hardest parts. And I've gotten way better at it over the years than when I first kind of got started. When I first started, I couldn't say no to anybody. It was like really, really hard. I had sort of become this person who said yes to everything. And I eventually got to a point where I got better at saying no, and more thoughtful about saying no. But I still certainly have times where it's just like I should have said no to that, and I didn't say no to that.
So in the name of progress here, the fact that you've been able to do it on a more consistent basis, maybe not to where you want it to be yet, it sounds like you've done some type of reframing,
Hmm.
maybe in the no, in either to
Yeah,
yourself or to the person. Is that, do you think, where progress exists as well? Is in the reframing
yeah.
of these?
So I have a framework that I use, and that I speak about all the time. I call it the OCG framework, and basically the OCG framework stands for opportunity, coincidence, and gift. So if something comes my way and I know I can take full advantage of it and it really is going to serve me, then that thing that comes my way is truly an opportunity. So I should take that opportunity and do something with it. If it comes my way and it's actually not really a fit for me, or it doesn't really light me up, or it doesn't really work for me, it's not an opportunity for me. It's a coincidence that thing came to me. Somebody thought of me, that's great, but it's a coincidence that it came to me. So if it's a coincidence, the way I like to think about it is, can I turn that coincidence into a gift? Is there somebody else who this would actually be an opportunity for? So sometimes things will come my way and I'll be like, this is not a fit. Like, this doesn't really work for me, or I'm not really excited about this, or I can't really make it happen. But then I'll say, okay, well, who would love this? And I've done this a lot with invitations. So people will invite me to a dinner or a gathering, and it will be beyond my, 1 to 3 rule that we talked about at the top of this, right? And I'll be like, I just really don't think I should go, or I don't think it's a good idea to go. And what I'll do is I'll go back to them and I'll say, I really appreciate it. I can't make it, but if I have someone who I think would really benefit from coming, would you want an introduction? Like, would you want them to come instead? And some people will come back and be like, nope, I just want you. And other people will come back and be like, oh my God, that's great. Yes, send me whoever it is. So then I'll go to somebody who I maybe even haven't talked to in a while and be like, hey, here's this thing. I can't go. They said that you can if you want. If you're open to it, go and check it out. Um, and that's really helped me a lot, to basically be like, okay, I can say no to this, but I can give something, to somebody else within my network, as well as, with the person that I'm talking to.
So it sounds like you've really made this a win-win scenario in many cases, right?
Yeah.
And it also feeds the possibility that some people admire you for connecting people,
Yeah.
right? This all
Very
feeds
possible. Yeah.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Thanks.
So this OCG framework sounds like it's a system of yours that really it serves you in deciding what to take on and what not to take on.
Yes, it does.
And that maybe just by honing it or fine tuning it or turning the volume up sometimes, is that maybe where the next level of discernment is for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, I think it's that aspect of being very, very honest about what is an opportunity. Because I think it's just it can be very squishy. And it can sort of get into that place of, oh well, no, this is an opportunity, and then you're kind of justifying it to yourself, or you're justifying it to others, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the big one.
Gotcha. Okay, so maybe some refining of the metrics of that
Mhm.
that coincidence, getting really crystal clear so that in a moment of weakness, you can't
Yes.
misinterpret the signs.
Exactly.
All right, that's fair. Michael, I've been with you now for an hour at least. So I would love to ask you if there's anything that you'd like to leave in terms of contact, wisdom with the listeners of this episode.
Sure. So I'll go with the one that I say a lot, because I think it's really important. I think we don't think about this enough. And that is that the keys to all the doors you need open are in other people's pockets. And the more that you meet folks and just develop relationships, the more you're going to find people who they've been through what you've been through, and they've already been through it, right? So they're able to just share with you wisdom, share with you ideas, connect you to somebody who can really help you. So like anything that you are currently struggling with, there is a very good chance that somebody else within your circle, within your network, within your community can help you with it and help you sort of move it faster. And you yourself are sitting there with just pockets full of keys. So there are all these other people who would love, love, love to learn from you how you overcame the things that you're dealing with, talk to you about who you can connect them with, and all those different types of things. So I think it's just so important to remember that and pay attention to that, because we need each other, and that's how things get done. We don't do this stuff alone. We always have support and help from others within our lives. So go out there, share your keys, talk to other people about theirs, and open some doors.
Beautiful. Beautifully stated. Thank you. And I will have your contact information in the show notes for folks to reach out to you as well, and how they can find out about you and all the fabulous things you're doing.
Awesome.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you for your time, your thoughtful consideration, your insights, perspectives, your nuggets. It's been a true joy. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. It's an absolute pleasure.
This has been Intentionally Ever After, hosted by intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek. If you would like to have your own intentional conversation with Joe on or off the air, visit intentionallyeverafter.com. Thanks for listening.